People were put into this machine and then they were essentially crushed to death.
Prisons are known for harsh treatment, but some regimes take brutality to unimaginable extremes. From hydraulic presses used for torture to rat-infested cells, these institutions create nightmarish conditions that push inmates to their limits. Today, we will explore the world's most difficult prison regimes, exposing the harrowing realities where survival is a constant battle against unimaginable suffering. Mendoza Prison. Mendoza Prison in Argentina has become a focal point of controversy and outrage in recent years due to its extreme conditions and treatment of inmates. Originally designed to house 600 inmates, the prison now holds over 1,600 individuals, leading to severe overcrowding that has reached a catastrophic level. The cells, intended for solitary confinement, now house 4 to 5 inmates each in cramped quarters, measuring only 9 feet in length and 6 feet in width. With space at a premium, prisoners often take turns sleeping on the limited available floor space in these cells that were built to accommodate a maximum of 2 people. Mattresses, sheets, and pillows are luxuries they can't imagine having in this underfunded and overcrowded prison. Virginia Shoppy, a former inmate, recounts the harrowing experience of living without a functioning sewage system, forcing prisoners to use makeshift toilets made from plastic bags and bottles, a shocking degradation of human dignity and a serious health hazard. The dire living conditions are exacerbated by a lack of adequate medical care, with reports of untreated wounds, infections, and the rapid spread of contagious diseases. Inmates suffering from both chronic and acute illnesses face a desperate struggle for medical attention and treatment. The prison has seen around 22 inmates lose their lives under circumstances that remain unclear and heavily criticized by human rights advocates. Amnesty International has been a vocal critic, pointing out the institution's failure to uphold basic human rights. In a memorandum to the governor of Mendoza province, Amnesty highlighted allegations of torture and ill treatment by prison staff, calling for immediate investigations and accountability. In the memorandum, they said, "The problems in the prison system in Mendoza run so deep that they require permanent changes in the province's prison policy. These changes are essential to avoid unleashing further violent acts, such as those noted in recent riots." The psychological toll of life in Mendoza prison is profound, with constant threats of violence from other prisoners and guards, arbitrary punishments like indefinite time in solitary, and long periods of confinement in overcrowded cells, contributing to severe mental health issues. Self-harm attempts are distressingly common as inmates grapple with the overwhelming hopelessness and relentless pressure of their daily existence. The authorities have ensured human rights organizations that efforts will be made to ensure all prisoners receive adequate medical and psychological care. They are also doing their best to eradicate cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, but the reforms will require a lot of time and funding before visible improvement can be seen. Sednaya Prison. Sednaya Prison, located just north of Damascus, Syria, earned the chilling nickname Human Slaughterhouse for its horrifying reputation. After all, most people who ended up there did not see the light of the day again. Run by the Syrian government, under the cruel leadership of Bashar al-Assad, it was a site of immense suffering, where thousands of civilians, political prisoners, and rebels were detained. Reports from organizations like Amnesty International and the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights revealed a grim reality. Torture, starvation, and mass executions were routine for the prisoners. Since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011, it's estimated that tens of thousands of people were killed within Sednaya's walls. The prison was made up of two main buildings, the White Building and the larger, more infamous, Red Building. Testimonies suggest that some of the most severely tortured prisoners were held in underground levels that were nearly impossible to access. Hidden beneath the prison, these dark cells symbolize the secrecy and cruelty of the Assad regime. One particularly grim detail was the existence of salt rooms. The purpose of the salt rooms was to preserve bodies in the absence of morgues. Prisoners who died were often left in their cells for days before being moved to these rooms, where rock salt covered the floor. The salt came from Aleppo and was a haunting reminder of the systematic abuse at Sednaya. In 2017, the US State Department accused the Syrian government of operating a crematorium at Sednaya to dispose of bodies and hide evidence of war crimes. Though there was no definitive proof, satellite images and witness testimonies suggested a deliberate effort to erase the atrocities. On December 8, 2024, rebel forces captured the prison during their advance into Damascus. As they broke through the prison's fortified walls, they discovered horrors that shocked even seasoned fighters. Deep underground in the Red Building, they found hidden cells where prisoners were confined in total darkness. In one particularly gruesome area, a hydraulic press was uncovered. Rebels alleged that it had been used to crush the remains of executed prisoners. Near the cells, they found plastic bottles used for urine and water-soaked blankets, signs of the prisoners' desperate conditions. When the prison was liberated, the rebels freed around 2,000 inmates, including women and children who had been held for years. For some, the news of the regime's fall brought joy. For others, it brought confusion. Many inmates had been isolated for decades, unaware of events like the death of Hafez al-Assad, Bashar's father. Sednaya prison remains a powerful symbol of the suffering endured during Syria's civil war, a dark reminder of the cost of unchecked power and systemic cruelty. Inside Danli prison. Taking a step into Danli prison is like stepping into chaos personified. Located in Honduras, a country already notorious for its high crime rates, this facility houses over 700 inmates, nearly double its intended capacity of 400. But it's not just the overcrowding that makes Danli one of the most dangerous prisons in Central America. The prison is a stark representation of a system that has collapsed, leaving inmates to create their own hierarchy, enforce their own rules, and determine their own survival. Once you cross the rusted gates of Danli, you leave behind any semblance of outside order. The guards, of which there are only 12 for the entire compound, have little control within the prison walls. Instead, a group of hand-picked inmates, known as coordinators, hold power. These men, many of whom are convicted murderers and drug traffickers, are responsible for enforcing the rules among their peers. At the top of the food chain is the godfather, Neri Calero, a convicted murderer who acts as the de facto ruler of Danli. Flanked by armed lieutenants, Calero's word is law. Disobey him, and you risk your life. Obey, and you might survive another day. Calero's power is more than just physical fear. He controls the prison economy, taking a cut of every transaction, from buying a bed to securing basic needs like water. Life inside Danli is a grim testament to human endurance. Cells originally designed to hold 7 inmates now cram in over 20. Sanitation is non-existent, with buckets doubling as showers and toilets. Rats scurry freely through the corridors, and in some cases, they end up as part of the menu. The kitchen is run by Ventura, a convicted machete murderer. His weapon of choice is always within reach. The most notorious cell, Cell 27, houses the most reviled inmates. According to Byron, one of its occupants, daily knife fights are a grim reality. It's a time bomb, he said, referring to the constant threat of violence. Weapons, including machetes and knives, are common inside the prison, and escape seems like a constant possibility. The perimeter fence has many holes. Inmates have been seen with firearms. Yet, the prison's subdirector, Lieutenant Vallejo, believes that the inmates are better positioned to manage internal conflicts and detect escape plans than the guards. For newcomers, survival often comes at the cost of dignity. Without money, they become cell slaves. They must clean the prison, fetch water, and cater to their cellmates' whims. Refusal isn't an option. Compliance is a matter of life and death. Danli Prison is more than just a penitentiary. It's a microcosm of a failed system. Here, power belongs to those ruthless enough to seize it. Survival hinges on submission, alliances, and luck. As you leave Danli, you know hauntingly that for the inmates who remain, every day is a battle to live another. This isn't just a prison, it's a kingdom ruled by criminals, where the price of mercy is often too high to pay. Black Dolphin, the most terrifying fortress. Black Dolphin Prison, nestled deep within Russia's Orenburg region, is a monument to humanity's darkest extremes. This high-security facility houses 700 inmates. It's a prison, but also a fortress of despair for the most dangerous criminals. Together, these inmates have taken an estimated 3,500 lives, averaging 5 per prisoner. This grim fact cements Black Dolphin's reputation. It is a home for the worst of the worst: serial criminals, terrorists, and cannibals. The prison is named after an eerie sculpture at its entrance. It is a black dolphin crafted by the prisoners. It symbolizes the freedom they will never regain. Here, life sentences are truly for life. The only escape is death. Inmates lose their identities upon arrival. They are thrust into a punishing routine. The cells are claustrophobic, just 50 square feet shared by 2 inmates, set behind 3 layers of reinforced steel doors. The prison's design ensures that no sound from the outside world reaches the inmates, and no whisper of hope escapes from the prison. Life here is a relentless cycle of surveillance, monotony, and psychological torment. Guards check on prisoners every 15 minutes, and cameras monitor them 24/7, leaving no moment of privacy or respite. Inmates are not merely confined, but utterly controlled. Movement outside their cells is rare and humiliating. Prisoners must walk bent at the waist, heads down. This viewlessness prevents escape attempts or surprise attacks. They are often blindfolded during transport. This disorients them and reinforces their helplessness. Unlike most prisons, Black Dolphin lacks a yard. Exercise means pacing in a slightly larger cage. This is while guards inspect their cells for contraband. Meals, simple portions of soup and bread, are eaten in their cells. Even the only allowed possessions, books, radios, and newspapers, are reminders of a lost world, not sources of comfort. The mental toll is as severe as the physical conditions. Nikolai Asanov is in prison for murdering his family. He struggles with, if you think about why you're here, what's waiting for you, that you'll never be free, you won't make it. Survival at Black Dolphin requires a will as strong as its walls. This is not just a place of punishment. It is a psychological crucible. It is designed to crush any remnant of humanity in those inside. The Big Tiger of Thailand. On the outskirts of Bangkok, Thailand, stands Bang Kwang Central Prison, a facility infamous worldwide for its harsh conditions. Locals call it the Big Tiger for its fierce, consuming nature. This prison is now a symbol of endurance and despair for its inmates. Constructed between 1927 and 1937, Bang Kwang was designed to house Thailand's most dangerous offenders, mainly those serving long sentences, awaiting final verdicts or sentenced to death. It was built under King Rama V. From the outset, the prison set itself apart with its unrelenting severity. Inmates had to wear leg irons for the first 3 months of incarceration. This was to break their spirits and enforce discipline. For death row prisoners, these shackles were often welded shut. It was a grim reminder of their impending fate. Although this practice was abolished in 2013, the legacy of those iron chains remains etched in the institution's history. Bang Kwang is home to Thailand's death row and execution chamber. Its execution methods have evolved from firing squads to lethal injections. It has housed a mix of Thai and foreign prisoners. Many foreigners have recounted their harrowing experiences to the world. The prison's operations were equally unforgiving. It had a chit system that enforced a survival hierarchy. The basic meals were a simple bowl of rice and vegetables. Anything extra cost extra. Wealthier inmates could exploit this system. They could hire others for labor or personal services in exchange for better food. This gap prompted foreign prisoners to start charities to improve conditions. The prison's notoriety has grown due to first-hand accounts. These include Warren Fellow's memoir, The Damage Done, and Paul Hayward's writings. They paint a grim picture of life in Bang Kwang. The prison is overcrowded, and it takes a toll on inmates. Notable prisoners include Alan John Davies, a UK citizen sentenced to death in 1995, who spent 17 years there before receiving a royal pardon in 2007. In 2013, a significant reform occurred when over 500 prisoners were freed from their shackles as a gesture of progress. Yet, the brutal conditions and systemic challenges persist for many high-profile inmates. Bang Kwang's cultural impact extends beyond Asia, thanks to works like the Australian TV series Bangkok Hilton, which introduced Western audiences to the prison's grim reality. Subscriber pick. Before we check out the top 5, here's a harrowing image from a prison where inmates can be seen locked up in tiny cages. It may seem staged, but in several overcrowded prisons, and the ones where rules are just a formality, this is a brutal reality, particularly in Texas, where people are left for weeks in containment cages that are contraptions smaller than telephone booths made of steel and mesh wire. Any inmate subjected to solitary confinement may have to spend days to even months in these cells without any access to a toilet. Don't you think that's inhumane? Diyarbakir Prison, a living nightmare. This infamous prison in Diyarbakir in the southeast is a reminder of Turkey's dark modern history. Built in 1980 by the Ministry of Justice, it was swiftly repurposed into a military detention center following the coup d'etat in September of that year. What followed was a reign of terror that etched Diyarbakir Prison into the annals of infamy. Dubbed the period of barbarity, the early 1980s saw over 600,000 individuals incarcerated under martial law. Diyarbakir became the epicenter of systemic oppression, particularly targeting the Kurdish population. Torture wasn't just a tactic here, it was a way of life. Prisoners endured unimaginable horrors, from electric shocks to the removal of nails and teeth. And then there was Joe, the notorious German shepherd trained solely to inflict genital torture. For those trapped in the prison, Joe was a symbol of pain and terror. The torment extended beyond the physical. Psychological abuse was wielded with equal cruelty. Mock executions, constant threats, and relentless isolation stripped inmates of their humanity. Survivors speak of overcrowded cells. They were so packed that prisoners suffocated. Their bodies formed grotesque piles, a grim display of neglect. The ordeal was particularly severe for Kurdish prisoners. The prison was a tool for forced assimilation and erasing their identity. Yet, even in this abyss of despair, sparks of resilience flickered. Nuran Chamla Marasa, a former prisoner, recounted the harrowing conditions. "We were 7 women crammed into a ward for 25. In Diyarbakir, men and women were equal, not in freedom, but in suffering. We endured isolation, military drills, and torture as soldiers do in their barracks." Her words echo the defiance of countless others who refused to let their spirits be crushed. The atrocities at Diyarbakir didn't just remain hidden behind its walls, they sparked action. The brutal conditions fueled the rise of the Kurdistan Workers' Party. It still challenges the Turkish state. Internationally, the prison's notoriety grew, with human rights organizations documenting the systemic attacks. In 2010, the European Court of Human Rights condemned Turkey for breaches after a massacre in the prison's visiting room left 8 prisoners dead. The government called it a riot. The world saw it as another chapter in Diyarbakir's horrifying legacy. ADX Florence, the fortress of isolation. ADX Florence, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, isn't just a prison. It's a fortress of isolation for America's most dangerous criminals. Located in the desolate heart of Colorado, this supermax prison holds individuals who are deemed too dangerous, too volatile, or too notorious for traditional facilities. ADX Florence is where the US justice system sends its most high-profile inmates to disappear. It is home to infamous terrorists, mob bosses, and serial criminals. Daily life in ADX is a monotonous grind of solitude. Each inmate is confined to a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell for 23 hours a day. The cells are designed to prevent escape. Solid concrete furniture, a bed, a desk, and a stool is built into the walls. A narrow, 4-inch slit of a window offers a view of nothing but the sky or a brick wall, ensuring inmates can't map their surroundings. A fluorescent light hums incessantly. Its unchanging glare bathes the cells, erasing any sense of time. Breakfast arrives silently, delivered through a slot in the door. Meals are basic and repetitive. They are just a cog in the psychological machinery meant to wear down the spirit. Inmates eat in total silence, their only company in the stark confines of their cells. Recreation, if it can be called that, offers 1 hour of solitude in a small, cage-like outdoor area. Even here, the towering walls and razor wire strip away any feeling of freedom. Some pace in circles, others stand, savoring the fleeting fresh air. Communication is almost non-existent. Phone calls are rare and heavily monitored. Letters, if allowed, are scrutinized for every word. Talking to other inmates is strictly forbidden. Thick, soundproof walls ensure no whispers pass through. The rare human contact comes from fleeting handshakes through the recreation cage mesh. It's a bittersweet reminder of their shared humanity. Psychological isolation is as harsh as physical confinement. Many inmates develop SHU syndrome, a condition marked by hallucinations, paranoia, and depression. The mind, starved of stimulation and human interaction, begins to fracture. Mental health care exists, but is limited. It often can't meet the needs of those struggling with the crushing weight of solitude. Punishment for breaking the rules is swift and severe. The special housing unit offers even greater isolation. It's a void where time and reality blur. ADX Florence is a hellish place. It is a cycle of repetition, a calculated deprivation. There is little room for hope or humanity. It's not just a prison, it's a psychological and physical gauntlet designed to ensure one thing: control. Camp 14, a kingdom of cruelty. Camp 14, also known as Kwang number 14, is situated approximately 55 miles north of Pyongyang, North Korea. This vast political prison camp, sprawling over 60 square miles, is a chilling reminder of the regime's merciless control over perceived enemies. Within its barbed wire borders, the very concept of human rights is obliterated. Camp 14 punishes dissenters and their families under the brutal 3 generations of punishment policy. It subjects about 15,000 prisoners to incomprehensible conditions. Entire families face forced labor, hunger, and abuse. This is due to trivial accusations, like a misplaced word against the state. Prisoners lose their identities and are reduced to numbers. This dehumanizing practice reinforces the camp's control. They are forced into grueling work like mining coal, tending livestock, or farming barren fields. They work from dawn till dusk on meager food rations. Prisoners face rampant malnutrition and starvation. They resort to eating rodents and insects to survive. Any act of defiance or a lapse in productivity can lead to severe punishments. These include public executions to terrify others into submission. Shin Dong-hyuk, one of the few escapees of Camp 14, offers a harrowing account of life within its electrified fences. Born inside the camp due to his father's alleged crimes, Shin grew up knowing only suffering, forced labor, and constant surveillance. At 14, Shin endured torture for his mother's and brother's failed escape. He was forced to watch as they were executed. His escape to freedom has exposed daily atrocities in the camp. These include the brutal killings of prisoners and barbaric punishments for minor infractions. The international implications of Camp 14's existence are profound. It shows North Korea's blatant disregard for human rights. It fuels tensions as nations struggle to address these violations. Despite calls for accountability, the regime remains unyielding. This leaves the world to question how to balance diplomacy with the urgent need to help those in inhumane conditions. Georgia's House of Horror. Far from North Korea, in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi, lies Gldani Prison, officially known as Penitentiary Institution Number 8. Despite Georgia's democratic governance, Gldani is a notorious prison. It is one of the world's worst. This facility is infamous for systemic abuse, corruption, and human rights violations. A series of shocking videos in 2012, which revealed prison staff abuses, made it worse. These clips, aired on Georgian TV, showed prisoners being tortured. They sparked outrage and protests. The conditions within Gldani are appalling. Chronic overcrowding means cells often hold double or triple their capacity. This fosters tension and frequent violent clashes among inmates. Food, clean water, and medical care are grossly inadequate. The prison's unsanitary environment raises the risk of infectious diseases. Reports from former inmates reveal a deeply entrenched culture of abuse. Torture methods include prolonged solitary confinement, beatings, and waterboarding. They are often used to extract confessions or punish defiance. A former inmate recounted the horrific treatment they endured. "They tore off my fingernails, broke my bones, and left me disfigured. At 43, I feel like an old man." Such testimonies underscore the inhumane practices within the prison walls. Corruption worsens these issues. Prison staff extort money from inmates and their families. They do this for basic privileges and safety. Those unable to pay are left vulnerable to even greater abuse and neglect. The 2012 scandals caused a political fallout in Georgia. It led to high-ranking officials resigning and the ruling party losing elections. However, systemic issues persist. It raises questions about the ethics of punishment. Are prisons meant to rehabilitate or to perpetuate cycles of cruelty? We hope you liked this video. Stay tuned for more.